Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. This is a quick Howard the Humongous episode to give you the skinny on something very sneaky going on in Syria. Every once in a while, you wonder in the Syrian situation if the United States is being used as a sock puppet. Every once in a while, you hear speculation that there is an 800-pound gorilla in the room, that there's an elephant in the room no one is talking about. Usually, people toss around the idea of Israel because it's popular to blame everything on Israel. After all, Israel is too small to, in any way, strike back. But there is an 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's an 8,000-pound gorilla in the room. It's the biggest elephant you've ever seen. In fact, the United States is being used as a sock puppet in the Syrian war. And who is the sock puppeteer? Well, there's a guy named Prince Bandar al-Sultan. He's a member of the royal family of Saudi Arabia. Remember, the Syrian conflict is not the civil war it is made out to be. It is not a bunch of democracy-hungry people who demonstrated peacefully in the streets. It is a proxy war. It's a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran for control of the Middle East and for control of the Islamic world. Well, this is not the first time that the Saudis have attempted to exercise influence over the United States. They've been trying to do it for a very long time. Prince Bandar al-Sultan first got involved with the United States under the Carter regime. Under the Carter regime and then under the Reagan regime, he was extremely helpful to the United States. He was doing us huge favors. What was the favor that he did for us? He shuttled money and weapons from us to the freedom fighters in Afghanistan. This is way back in the 70s. Remember the freedom fighters in Afghanistan? They were probably fighting before you were born. Who were they? They got a name after we trained them, after we weaponed them, after we provided them with money, doing it all through Prince Bandar al-Sultan. The name they got was Al-Qaeda. Yes, a prince from Saudi Arabia helped us nourish and bring into existence our most mortal enemy today, Al-Qaeda. Then Prince Bandar, who became extremely close to the folks in the White House, helped the Reagan administration out again. This time he did it by funneling money to the Contras. The Contras were the folks down in South America that we were nourishing in Nicaragua to overthrow a Marxist regime in the days of the Iran-Contra scandal. Prince Bandar then became so close to the two Bush presidents that he became known as Bandar al-Bush. He was like an unofficial member of the White House. So he was very instrumental in ways that it is very, very hard to ferret out in the war in Afghanistan and then in the war in Iraq, where to a certain extent we were doing Saudi Arabia's bidding. Now Saudi Arabia is engaged in what it regards as a life and death struggle against Iran, and it is trying to pry one of Iran's assets away from it, Iran's ally, Syria. And to do it, it was using the Arab Spring. The idea that, hey, 2 years ago, it looked like you could topple a monarch in 2 months. The Saudis tried it. They tried to topple Bashir Assad, who was allied with Iran, in order to weaken Iran. It didn't work. They ended up with a civil war. They've been begging, pushing, pummeling, doing everything in their power to get us involved in that civil war. And meanwhile, Bandar al-Sultan, the guy who was the unofficial member of the Bush White House, had disappeared from the mainstream scene. Well, the king of Saudi Arabia got so desperate that last summer he brought Prince Bandar back. And what has Prince Bandar been doing? Prince Bandar has gotten us involved with setting up training camps for the so-called Syrian rebels in Turkey. Then when he wasn't happy, when Saudi Arabia wasn't happy because Turkey was leaning too far over to the Muslim Brotherhood, to the jihadists, to the Islamists, they moved the training camp to Iran. Then they brought us evidence that there were chemical weapons. This is a long time ago being used in Syria. When that didn't seem to move us, they tried something that had been used in order to get us involved in Iraq. They brought us the equivalent of a defector. They brought us somebody who had been allegedly poisoned by the chemical weapons of the Syrian regime, of the evil Bashar al-Assad. He was tested in England and the United States, and it turned out that he'd been poisoned by sarin gas. The boys and girls, who did the sarin gas come from? Nobody asked. Nobody knew. It didn't work. It didn't get us involved. So Prince Bandar installed an ambassador for Saudi Arabia, or Saudi Arabia has installed an ambassador, who, because of the kind of incredible influence that Prince Bandar and Saudi Arabia has, is one of the few people in Washington who can get together with the President of the United States. The ambassador from Saudi Arabia can get together with the President on a regular basis. There are members of the President's cabinet who cannot get together with him on a regular basis. And when the ambassador from Saudi Arabia can't get together with the president himself, he can always get together with the members of cabinet. Saudi Arabia turns out to have more power than Nebraska, Wyoming, Texas, or almost any state of the Union in moving the United States in foreign affairs. Prince Bandar also tried to target individual senators and congressmen of influence that he could win over to the Saudi cause. And he found 3. One was Joel Lieberman, who's now gone. The other 2 were John McCain and John McCain's partner in crime, whose unfortunately name escapes me at the moment. It'll come to me. But one way or the other, and so John McCain has been screaming, kicking, and ranting for us to give weapons to the Free Syrian Army, to the rebels, and to aid the rebels in every conceivable way. Why? Because John McCain, who is normally independent, is being puppeteered by a master of puppeteering, Prince Bandar. So when you look for an 800-pound gorilla in the room, when you look for an elephant hidden in the corner, when you look for the person or the entity that is controlling the fist in the sock of the United States, turning us into a puppet in Syria, look to Saudi Arabia and look to Prince Bandar. This is Howard the Humongous speaking to you from the future, but it's your job to make.